And here are your daughters, Angela and Catherine. It's about 7 hours ago, and that's the last information we have.
Catherine!
Angela?
If you can hear this, we love you. Please come home.
Hey, you found her?
What are you and Catherine doing out there in those woods?
You were just walking and walking. That's all I remember.
Angela, can you tell your dad how long you were gone?
A few hours.
Baby, you've been gone 3 days.
The Exorcist Believer. The 50 years it has been since the first film, and now we've gotten another one, and it's a doozy. So, this movie, it is done by David Gordon Green, who, and a lot of the same writers and producers as the Halloween trilogy they did. So I know already a lot of people were saying like, oh, well, this is going to be, either surprisingly good or this is going to be a disaster, depending on how you feel about the Halloween ones. But they're now doing an Exorcist movie, or now soon to be a trilogy. So this one is a direct sequel off of the first film, and it's basically about these two kids who they're best friends, and then they go off into the woods, and they come back. They're discovered like a couple days later, and they're both the kids' families are like, well, what happened? And they have no recollection of anything that happened, but they both start having like these strange episodes. So then both of these families have to basically come together to then, solve and then defeat the evil that has reigned upon them. So when I heard that, I was going like, okay, so we're not just dealing with one exorcism, we're dealing with two. So it's like, okay, so it kind of upped the playing field a little bit. So I did like that. So when I heard that they were doing another film, I went, I don't really know how this is going to work. And I saw the film and went, so there's stuff in here that I liked, and then there's stuff in here that I didn't like. What I liked, some of the build-up, I did like. I did like how they were kind of playing with the environment, but also just like the creepiness of the little girls, which, is kind of a cliche, but they were able to do that pretty well. They brought Ellen Burstyn back into this, which I thought was really cool. Now here's where it gets to the negative. How they bring her back and what happened between the events of the first film and now is, I'm not gonna say what it is, but it is exactly the same thing to what happened if you ever watched the Exorcist show. The short, I think it was like 2-season, short-lived Exorcist show. It is exactly the same of what happened. And when I watched it and I went, oh my God, that is like beat for beat. I had to kind of explain it to people around me, like, yeah, did you ever watch the Exorcist show? And they're like, no, but I want to. And I'm like, well, what they pulled was exactly what they did in that show. And they just went, oh. Well, I like what they did, and what happened between the events of the first film and this one, but to have seen that already be done in a show version of the franchise it's just, it comes to me as a cop-out. It's like, you couldn't think of something else, so you just said, hey, let's borrow this, because I don't think a lot of people watch that show, and, you know, people will just buy it. Now, that may not be the case. They may have just said, like, oh, it's a coincidence that this happened. But who knows? But with them bringing Ellen Burstyn back, it was pretty cool to see her come back. But here's the issue. She is barely in the movie. Barely in the movie. She shows up, and then she's gone 10 minutes later, gives, like, a piece of advice to the main characters, and then she's, like, gone for the rest of the movie. And I was like, really? You brought her back to just do what you did? And I was like, well, that's kind of a slap in the face. And so, and then another thing too is that while I think the acting was pretty good, there was really, I didn't feel like there was a certain character in either one of the families that I really could latch onto, because, you know, when I started feeling for them, they would pull some stupidity or some, like, stupid, or, like, you know, like something where I just backtracked and went, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? You had me up to this point, and now you're just kind of being idiotic. And the ending of the movie, I get what they were doing and trying to kind of be that, like, I won't spoil the end, but it does kind of go with that, like, downbeat kind of ending, and it somewhat does leave it open for them to come back and do another film, kind of like the way the first Halloween one, in the 2018 one, where the way it ended was kind of like okay, you know what, this is actually a good, like, end to this. You know, if we come back and do another one, we could eventually make it fit, but if we don't, this is a good end. And with this, it's like, okay, this wasn't necessarily a good end to this, but it does kind of, like, say, like, all right, well, this story is done. You know, we don't necessarily need to come back and do another film, but they originally planned this to be a trilogy, and then the next one is scheduled to come out, I think, 2025. So, yeah, who knows what's gonna happen. So I personally think, I don't think this is as bad as a lot of people are saying it is, but I'm not gonna go and be that one guy and go, like, oh, actually, you guys are dogpedaling on this, like, to hell. And I'm like, you know, I'm kind of in that boat, but I'm like a step closer, where I'm going, like, yeah, it's not particularly all that good, but at the same time, I do recognize that they did some things in here that I actually did like, but it was like little bursts of what I liked. And so I don't think, like I said, I don't think this is as bad as people say it is, but it's not, you know, I'm not gonna jump in and go, like, oh, it's pretty good. Like, no, it's okay to me. You know, like, it's honestly, it's better than what 2 was. It's just 2 was. I don't even know what that was. It was way better than whatever that was. But I personally, you know, the first movie, it's a classic, and what's even funny is that David Gordon Green, he came out and said, like, I really wish that William Friedkin was still alive to have seen this. And I'm thinking at the same time, going, like, no, he wouldn't. I'm like, no, he wouldn't. I'm like, nope, I don't think he would like it. So, yeah. So it's kind of like, okay, well, if he was still alive, you'd probably be eating your words, because he'd probably be like just taking a big dump on this. But I think overall, despite the things that I didn't like, and then with some of the things that I did like, I don't necessarily think this is a terribly awful film. There's some in here that I did like, but overall, I would probably give this a high, like, fine, or maybe even a low average, like somewhere in between there, because I do recognize some of the things that I did like, but also when I think about stuff that I didn't like, it then goes back down. So, do I think a trilogy is necessary? No. But besides, if you want a true sequel to the original film, go and watch the Exorcist show they did, at least the first season, because it is actually a direct sequel off of the first film, and it actually works, and it's suspenseful, and it's really good. And when I watched that, I didn't think it was going to be good, and I was generally surprised on how much I actually liked it. So if you want to see a true representation of a sequel to the original, I definitely recommend checking out the first season of The Exorcist show. It is really good, and yeah. If you don't want to watch that and you want to go to this, you may find some things you would like, but at the same time, it's probably going to be more of a disappointment than a positive.
What did you do?
Trip, drop, trip. Is that Catherine's heartbeat?
They're beating in sync.
God, please.